Hello and welcome to another edition of Sunday Night. This is an hour of intriguing, inspirational, and insightful conversations with men and women who have blazed the trail of advancement in service to our nation, to themselves, their families. And we bring you these inspirational conversations. Today, my guest is a man who we came to love listening to on the radio. He's transitioned from life as a broadcast journalist into a politician, a member of parliament, representing the people of Ofuasi, and currently the president's representative at the Ministry of Works and Housing. None other than Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. You're welcome to Sunday Night.
Thanks, Isha.
This is a bit surreal. And I always say that the most difficult interviews are with the people you know. So help me, God. But, I mean, is this a life you envisaged?
No. I always make the point that a lot of the things that have happened in my life are purely by accident, blessed accidents. My opportunity to serve in the media was a blessed accident because I had not studied or planned or sought a media career. And then after that, my opportunity to serve in Parliament and in the constituency was another blessed accident, again because it wasn't part of my roadmap for my life. My opportunity to serve in the executive branch of government, whether at the Ministry of Information or here at the Ministry of Works and Housing, again are things that I had not planned for. But I think somehow in my socialization and my experiences in the years gone by, I have been prepared for these accidents, and I take them one day at a time.
That's wonderful. Modestly said. Let's go back to Koforidua. Born in Koforidua some 43 years ago?
42.
42. Oh, sorry. And then you went to St. Bernadette in Dansoman.
Actually started at Pentecost Preparatory School in Koforidua.
Right.
And then when my father was a banker being transferred, to various towns. So when he was transferred to Accra in 1989, then we came to Accra to live with him.
Okay.
And that's when I went to St. Bernadette School in Dansoman, Accra.
Okay. Of course, you went to a school I almost got into, Pope John's. I quite remember I wrote an entrance exam, but that's a story.
You were probably not religious enough.
No, actually, I got in, but there's some hurdles my mother couldn't get over
I see.
at the time. But yeah, I taught the school. Very beautiful school.
It is.
Any fond memories from Pope John's?
Lots of them. Lots of them. I mean, I remember first when we were selecting schools, I had selected some schools in Cape Coast, and my mother went with me to see Mrs. Kato, St. Bernard's head teacher at the time, because she would make it a point to meet with every student and your parents while selecting the schools. So when we went in, she asked me which schools, and I mentioned the two schools in Cape Coast. I won't mention them now, else they'll feel too good. And Mrs. Kato and my mom said, no, it won't happen.
Mm-hmm.
We know you. You're very quiet, but you can be a very stubborn cat. So we're not going to let you go there. And in their conversation, they arrived at Pope John, because my mother was previously teaching at Ghana Secondary School. She was a senior house mistress there. That's how come I was born in Koforidua at the time. And so she had a lot of friends within the education service in Koforidua, good number of them at Pope John. And so they came to that arrangement and let him go to Pope John. I remember my very first day in Pope John when I went in there and went to do the enrollment. On my form, I had selected business. And Mr. Bodidankwa, we used to call him something. Jason May looked at it and said, no, 12 ones, you got to go do science. And I said, no, I had come to do business. That's what I selected. I'm more interested in business than they said, no, 12 ones, got to do science. So they pushed me into a science class.
Wow.
And for the first about 1 month, and those days, 1 month was like a third of the term.
Yeah.
I was in a science class, so confused. I didn't like it. I wasn't interested in it. I had no interest in that subject. It was, I think, in the second month that I was finally moved to business 2.
Okay.
And I recall going through the motions and studying the classes there. And then I recall, for example, the fact that because of the course that I wanted to do in university, a Bachelor of Commerce program, I was advised to take elective math. But elective math was not part of the electives for
business. They had to be in science.
Yeah. So I would do the normal business courses, economics, accounting, business management, I think clerical office duties, etc. And then after school, I'll go to Bodidankwa's house to study elective math privately.
Okay.
So for 3 years, I studied elective math privately. And then when they were registering for the
final exam, yeah.
Apart from the core subjects they registered me, he added elective math to it for me. So when my mates were done and were leaving campus,
you still had to stick around
with the science students and write. So I started with the science students,
and then you ended with wow.
But it was a lovely experience. I ended up with 5 A's and 3 B's, for the WASI exam, and then went on to Cape Coast University. But Pope John was lovely because I spent a lot of time in the seminary house with a good number of my colleagues, but I never got the calling to become a Catholic priest.
Maybe it will come later in life, but
after 4 children,
No,
but it was a very, very, very lovely experience. Those days we had the doomsaw of the President Kufuor days.
That's right.
And St. Joseph's Hospital was where you find electricity at night to study. So you come there and come and study. There wasn't much of water on campus, so you carry a bucket and walk sometimes 2 hours out to town to the wells to get water. We didn't have many teachers handling a lot of courses, so there were courses where you had to study and teach your classmates.
Wow.
I remember, for example, in my study group, I used to teach biology in my study group. So I would study biology and teach until today. I can still recall some of the things on respiration, the external intercostal muscles will move up and out and all of those things. So lots of fun memories from Pope John.
That's pretty nice. I mean, it's quite an interesting thing where you were giving quite a lot of responsibility very early on, having to do peer learning. How much would you say that your experiences at Pope John has shaped you into the Kojo Oppong Nkrumah we know today?
I mean, I think it shaped me immensely. First, one of the early groups I joined when I was in school was the Pope John Junior Achievement Company Limited. So from a very early age, I think in Form 1, you learn how we come together and float shares and contribute shares to set up a company, decide which projects we're going to fund with a company, execute the projects, make profit, and distribute among ourselves. Today, it's what shaped me to build my business. Lots of fun memories. For example, when I joined the Legion of Mary and came through to become president of the Legion of Mary, and in organizing programs between, Pope John, St. Peter's, St. Rose's, and all of these Catholic schools in the region. And that role of leadership and getting people together to get things done, assigning roles here and there, shaped me extensively. And today I find it in the work I do. I remember when I ran for a senior prefect and ended up as assistant senior prefect 1. And the balance between authority and students and how to advocate for students but not necessarily disrespect authority, and sometimes how to ensure that authority understands that they are totally wrong, especially when I was information minister. That balance came to me very clearly. Going into cabinet to advocate for the people based on, let's say, a call to include dialysis care in NHIA, and trying to make that case to authority and deal with pushback from authority. So a lot of the lessons I learned in Pope John, yes, very much helped me till today.
Fantastic. Now, it's quite evident that from your own account, you are very entrepreneurial. Is this the wind in Koforidua or something at home that got you to have that bug?
My father was a banker. In fact, both my parents were teachers. And then my father branched off into banking. And my mother remained an English teacher. So from Koforidua and then to Wesley Grammar here in Accra and later St. Mary's. And I remember those days, my mom would take us to school, and back in the car, the only way she could get us to keep quiet was to give us a book to read. One of the books that she bought for me to read very early was by Bob Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Wow.
At a very young age.
Awesome investment.
Yes. And the book created a conflict in me because in one breath, my father kept making the point that you need to complete your education and get a certificate and get recruited by somebody so that you get a job and you get a pension afterwards. And here's my mom's book that she's given me.
It's telling you you can make it on your own.
A totally different thing. And I felt very challenged by it. And I think it's from that point that my entrepreneurial desire started blossoming. So when I got to Pope John and I heard about junior achievement, I was blown away. So I joined it. When I got to the university and I heard about students in free enterprise, which is now known as Enactus, very similar to, junior achievement, I was in love with it. When I left uni and got a job finally at Joy FM where we worked, after a while, I was still eager to get into private business. And as you would recall, I set up my private business not very far from the office.
Yeah.
And started
West Brownstone, right?
Yes. And started, exploring the world of entrepreneurship. So I suspect it came from that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I've bought copies already for my kids.
Wow.
Yeah. My first two, I really want them to also understand and explore the world of entrepreneurship.
Fantastic. Now, Mom evidently gave you a book that was at odds with what Dad had been saying. Were there any interesting differences in the approach that, say, your dad would do things from how your mom did in trying to shape their son?
I laugh because my father has a nickname at home. Now he knows. He didn't know at the time. We used to call him Killer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because he was so tough. He had this very rigid streak in whipping everybody in line, literally, to follow the dictates that had been laid down. My mom was a bit liberal in her latter years, but also pretty strict as a teacher herself in the early years. And they had two, they used to play this good cop, bad cop, approach as we then grew a bit older. But I think at a point you begin to understand why, because they don't want you to make the mistakes that they've made. They don't want you to have the challenges that they have had, and they want you to learn the lessons very early. So from my dad's point of view, very, very high-handed. But I'm grateful because I think today it's contributed to my own attempt to be self-disciplined. And then I even find that in my own approach with my subordinates and my colleagues and people I work with, sometimes I catch myself doing exactly as he would do, that this is the line and we have to walk on it. No ifs, no buts, no frills on the side. Let's get it done this way.
You're a mini killer.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I think we tend to, that's, I think, the beauty of becoming your own man and some, raising other people, because then you start understanding a bit more the perspective and the point of view from which your parents did certain things. And I have that. I grapple with that at home as well. Let's dial back a little bit. So early years in Koforidua, then you moved to Accra. Different environment.
Very.
Dansoman, well, had a lot of trees then. I don't know if it still does. Yeah. But it was a very bustling sub-metropolis, if I could call it that, compared to Koforidua. Did you have any culture shock, and how did you deal with the transition of moving from Koforidua and coming into the crazy Dansoman?
I had a massive culture shock. One of the first things was dealing with traffic, because in 1989 in Koforidua,
there was only 2 traffic lights.
I'm not even sure if there was one at the time, but you didn't see traffic build up that much. And then now when you come to Accra, and even in those days when you come to Accra, on the Mataiko stretch between the bank quarters coming through to Mataiko towards the Zongo Junction area, you will find heavy traffic build up in the morning. And it was like, in fact, I had a cousin, I had a fancy cousin who had come to visit us at a point, and we always tease him with that. I say, Kasa Ankunya. Because, basic things like traffic was a culture shock.
Yeah.
But even specifically in terms of education, so where I was coming from, we were not used to, for example, writing cursive. And then I come into this school. I used to be a southpaw initially. Then I come into this school where I am now being asked to write with my right hand, and then they are writing cursive. My handwriting never recovered from it.
Wow.
So today when I scribble, sometimes my office manager will bring it back and say, what did you write here? I can't read it. But specifically, you would then find that these kids who were here studying at St. Benedict were on a certain level. Were punished for speaking vernacular. Elsewhere, if they had their way, you would be, rewarded for speaking English.
Yeah.
And then the instruments with which they studied in those days were not the same between the two institutions. So I had a massive culture shock in the beginning, but I think it took me a while. It was when I got to JSS 1 that I learned how to learn.
Okay.
So when I came to Accra first and I was in class 2, I used to be, I think, last but 3 or last but 4 in class. Struggled through to like JSS 1. And a good friend of mine, Ernest Champon, and I, in JSS 1, sitting at the back, had another accident, and that's how we figured out how to learn. And the funny story was that Ernest's sister was 2 years ahead of us, so I think she was in Form 3 and we were in Form 1.
Okay.
And they were preparing for the BC at the time, so they had past questions, and her past questions were with him. So, going through it, we kind of saw the questions, worked the answers, and our math master, Mr. Kojo Oppong Nkrumah, used to come in and do what we did in those days, mental.
Mental, that's right.
Okay, so now, as he did it, we figured out that it was the questions we were solving earlier that were now being asked in this mental. And as we produce the answers, they'll finish, you pass the books forward, they'll mark, then they will call out from 0. So I think they got to about 8 or 9. And the most brilliant guys in the class had already, been called. Feet. Yes, so
and they're like, but there's an anomaly.
And then they were surprised to find that Ernest and I had actually, I think we had gotten 9 or something.
Wow.
So Mr. Oday was pretty surprised. But we then found out that if you do the test before the real test, if you prepare before the real test, you will be able to ace it. And so it was in JSS 1 that I actually got the streak. And I took off since then, making it a major part of my life to prepare before the real test. And it served me well in the years gone by.
Yeah, you seem to have made some good friends, because peer pressure is always a parent's biggest fear.
Yeah.
So it's nice to know that you had someone who you spend time and it led to a
No,
brilliant
but I understand now
outcome.
we're actually not that serious in class. We were always playing. This was just an accident because of her older sister's past questions.
I see.
But it served us well. It opened the door for us.
Now, you were minding your business at British American Tobacco in Treasury,
Yes.
doing analysis.
Yes.
How did Kwesichum sniff you out of that place?
When I was in junior high school, senior high school Form 3, and I had run for senior prefect. My campaign manager was a guy known as Delali Jijinyo.
Oh, Della?
Yes.
Okay, it's all coming together.
And Della went to tech and had a lot of friends in tech. I went to Cape Coast University. So Della was doing publishing in tech, and I think during the vacations he would come to Joy to intern. So from what he tells me, at one of those conversations, they said they were looking for a young person who could, do a few things. He gave me the full description. And he said, I know the guy. He's at Cape Coast University. He's a friend of mine. He's the one you are describing. So he called me and said, listen, Sunday, let's meet at Joy and let me introduce you to, I think, Kofi Usu at the time. They are looking for interns like you. So Sunday, I finish mass. I get on a bus from Pokwase at the time. I come and then we go in. At that time, Joy was literally uncompleted.
Yeah.
It was Kwesichum's, I think, mother's house or uncle's house.
That's right.
And they were now, so you go through like the living room and you go in there. We went, Kofi Usu sized me up and they asked me to come and do an internship. So before the internship, I'll go back to Cape Coast University. If there's a report on campus, I'll go to the phone booth and make a report to Joy.
Right.
And then eventually during the vacation, I came in as an intern and left.
Okay.
And I didn't really enjoy it. So I left. But when I was finishing level 300 in uni, as a member of Students in Free Enterprise, I participated in the annual competition. Actually, I led my team to the annual competition, the SAIF annual competition,
Right.
and led my team to win. And one of the judges was Kwesichum. So Kwesichum goes back to Joy and tells Kofi Usu that I met this chap at the SAIF competition. I think you should hire him. And he says, what's his name? And Kwesichum says his name is Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. And Kofi also laughs and says, that's the guy who came to do the internship here like, I think 6 months ago or something. So Kofi also then calls me to come and do the internship a second time. So I come, and after that I leave. After school, I go to London to go work as a construction worker and a security worker. Well, Charlie, they try.
No. You will find the money.
You for make the thing have to smoke pong pong.
That's right.
All right, so I'm in London when Kofi also calls me that Kwesichum has instructed him that he has to find that boy to come back and do his national service proper at Joy, and he would hire him afterwards. But when I came back, I had already gotten a job at British American Tobacco as a treasury analyst.
Okay.
So that's how come I am at British American Tobacco, working as a treasury analyst, roll out my spreadsheets, looking for, credit for my farmers so that they can grow their stuff, and then we can pay, my traders who are selling, I'm doing them credit lines, etc. So then Kofi also comes and says, you have to come to Joy and then come and work after your service. So we strike a deal that I'll work at British American Tobacco during the day, and then at 5 o'clock when I close, I'll come and work on the evening shift at Joy. Because earlier, at the end of my SAIF competition, actually, that same day, Kwesichum offered me a job, and Ken Gomado of British American Tobacco also offered me a job. But I took BAT, because I told you that earlier, I hadn't really enjoyed
your time as an intern.
Yeah. So now when I came back and I was with BAT, then Kofi also comes. So we strike this arrangement that, okay, I'll do both. I'll do this during the day, and then in the evening I'll come. And that's how it starts.
Wow.
So I close from BAT. I drive my Fiat Tipo, rush through Cathedral traffic light, get to Joy just around 5:20. Matilda Sante, who is the editor at the time, would have finished producing Newsnight. And I will go on the business report on Newsnight and then work through the night shift. In the morning, I'll do the business report on Komla Dumo's morning show, and then I'll go to BAT to go work. And that's how it started.
Wow. And little did you know at that time, did you envisage sitting in the chair at some point?
They say every constable wants to be an IGP someday. So you walk in and you see the bigger show, and you're kind of wondering how would it be like to be doing this job. But from hosting the business report, then Matilda challenged me to actually anchor Newsnight. because Newsnight used to be anchored by Akwesi Sapong.
That's true.
So then Matilda challenged me to anchor. So I think after about 6 months, they moved me to anchor Newsnight. And then later, when Komla was leaving for the BBC, Ken Ashigbe then invited me for a conversation about coming to, take over the morning show. And just to demonstrate to you my surprise, again, that was a Sunday. I had come to church. That time I had gone to church at Lighthouse Chapel International, and I'd come to meet Ken in the office. They had now finished the building, and Ken was on the top floor.
Okay.
So I go see Ken, and, we're talking, and then Ken says, so how is it? How would it be like to do the morning show? I'm like, everybody, who works here would like to be the morning show host, but you have to have the skill and the capacity for it. But I don't know. Myself, I'm not a journalist. I'm not really into this journalism thing. I'm doing it. I'm enjoying it, but I'm not sure that I really want to take on a career here. So anyway, you called me. What did you call me about? And he said, this is why I called you. Yeah. So you have to come start on Monday. Komla is going to the BBC. Kwesi and I have spoken. We've taken a decision that you should come do it. I say, okay. Then we go on with our conversation. We talk about, engineering. He was an engineer. Yeah. I had never studied engineering. I still found it fascinating. We talked about it in a few things. And I left. But I didn't believe him. So on the Monday morning, I didn't come. I came in to do my business report.
At the time you were
supposed to. On Komla's show. At the time I was supposed to do it. So when we are done with the business report and Komla is playing the commercials, then Stan Dugbe, who was the producer at the time, walks in and says, they say they come do the morning show. Then Komla, Komla will laugh. And then I'm like, this thing, is this serious? They're like, yeah, Ken is serious. You have to see him and close this conversation and come. So I go back to Ken. Ken is like, I'm serious. We're going to have to do this. So then on the Tuesday, I have to come in at 4:30, 5 a.m. To prepare with Komla to start the show. So I do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday with Komla. And then I think Thursday was his last show. And then Friday, I was left to do the 2 hour before Kweku Sichiado will come in to do,
So you just got thrown into the deep end.
Thrown into the deep end, made a lot of mistakes, made a mess of myself. But I was very, very privileged to have leaders like Bennett Frimpong, who came on board as my producer, Samuel Kwadade Rinchi, Emmanuel Kofi Ansa, Matilda.
The general himself.
Yeah, General Matilda Santiago himself, who always kept encouraging me that you can do this. And after a while, I think I overcame it, and then we managed to do it.
Kojo, I know you've said that a lot of the things that have happened to you has been blessed accidents, but I don't think anybody could have scripted host of the Super Morning Show, politician, parliamentarian, minister of state. But I know your colleagues used to call you honorable when you were enjoying.
Because we used to play a lot of games in the newsroom. Yeah. So they used to call me honorable even right from that time. Maybe they were prophetic.
But what was the transition like? I mean, it's a daunting thing. I mean, I'd love to serve my country, but I don't think I have the skin to want to get into politics. How were you able to say, I'm going to do this?
So, I had a conversation with Kwesi Chum when he eventually convinced me to do the morning show after Ken had, mentioned and I had gone to see him, etc. Another time I said, Komla had done 10 years. I was going to try and do 5 and go on to do my business interests. After about 6 years or so, I initially said to him that I was going to resign. And he said no. By 2013, I went back to him and I made the point to him that I thought time was up and I needed to go. And once again, he said no. Because technically, the reason for which I was resigning at the time was that I was going to the Ghana School of Law. And so he said, no, I won't accept your resignation. Write me a new letter asking for study leave without pay. And that's the final letter that I wrote, and then I sent it in. And I left. So went to, study the law, to be called to the bar, and then to push my private business interests. And around the same time, our Member of Parliament, David Oppong Nkrumah, who had done 12 years, said he wasn't going to run again. And the executives and the leadership, after we had had conversations about it, later came to see me and suggested that I should run. Spoke to Dr. Mensah Otabil, spoke to a few senior people, spoke to Nana Akufo-Addo, etc. at the time, and took a decision to run. And if you look at the statement I issued just at the time I was going to run, I said, I know the space. I know it's very difficult, a daunting task. It's a very unforgiving space. But I think that there is enough reason that has been made to me to actually take this up and serve. Prior to that, Ofonsia UAB was not a very well-known constituency. But I thought that going in there, bringing national attention to Ofonsia UAB, advocating for Ofonsia UAB, will help me attract into the constituency a lot of development, and also bring to the national limelight some of the opportunities that were there. I did not envisage that I was going to be a deputy minister or minister. In fact, I thought I was just going to be a member of parliament.
Focus on, advocacy.
Then, when we won the election, Mustafa Hamid asked me to come and assist him on the transition. And then Mustafa left for school to do his final viva at the PhD. So I was asked to be spokesperson for transition. And when President Akufo-Addo was appointing him as minister and asked him for a deputy, he requested that I be his deputy. So then I ended up being MP and deputy minister for information. And when Mustafa was moved over to inner cities, he recommended that I become minister. Then the president agreed with him and made me minister. Served, I think, for the longest period so far as Minister for Information. And then in the shuffle of Valentine's Day, the president moved me now here to housing. I never imagined I was going to be here. So I spent the first 2 months trying to understand this space, seeing what we could prioritize in the 9 months or so that were left, and just run as fast as I can to tackle the issues and opportunities that I have.
In the voice of the Achuguba JSC, you see your level now. You see your true size. Because you see, as the host of the Super Morning Show, you'd have sat with possibly some previous ministers who held this portfolio.
Absolutely.
And quizzed them about the housing deficit and public works and all of these things.
True.
How has it been walking in here and seeing at first hand what the hurdles are, what the challenges, and the vision to turn it around?
So I knew the issues from a distance. You talk to the minister, he'll mention the housing deficit, I think at the time 2 point something, then later 2 million, now 1.8. And they'll tell you about all the things that they are doing, sea defense projects, etc. But when I sat in front of President Akufo-Addo and he said, I want to move you to works and housing, and I said, I serve at the pleasure of the president, sir. And I asked, are there any specific things you want me to pay attention to? And he gave me my marching orders. Try and deal with the stalled projects like Saglemi, etc. Try and focus on rural or district housing, and try and fast track some of the housing projects that exist. And then I came to the ministry and started reading up on all of these reports. It was a different dimension. And especially between the time and the resource constraints, you can't do everything. You have to prioritize. And so it comes to you very differently. Prior to coming here, the only experience I had in this area is being a construction worker on a construction site in the UK. Never gone to civil engineering school, never done real estate development. But I think one of the first things is to learn. Immerse yourself and learn. Let the architects and engineers and doctors and professionals, let them teach you. And I think it was Dr. Kojo Oppong Nkrumah who said that if you want to lead the people, go to them and live with them, eat their food, live in their community, sit with them. They will show you what the issues and what the solutions are. And you can bring your leadership skills to bear. So they've taught me a lot. They tell me that I have too much energy and I'm pushing too much. But haven't taught me. I then bring my leadership to bear to try to see how we can tackle some of the issues.
I mean, the issues are simple and complex. Complex in terms of how you're able to prioritize and get the resources to deal with the gamut of things that you have to deal with. Simple in the sense that the 32 or so million Ghanaians, they need houses. Public works need to be done. So on that front is very simple. Do you find this as similar to previous portfolios you've held, be it in private sector or at the information ministry, where you think with a bit of the Kojo creative magic and innovation, I can turn this around?
My mind works in a certain structure. First, what's the baseline data? Where are we now? What's the situation now? What are the key issues that need to be attended to? What are the value drivers in these key issues? What are the resources that I have at my disposal, including time? Therefore, what is the line of best fit to connect all of these? Data they gave me was that about 99% of our units are being delivered by the private sector. I asked which segment of the market, the top 5%, because that's the market that can actually buy a home. The 35% that follows that, they need affordable, well, no, the 60% that follows that, they need affordable housing. And then the 35% at the bottom, they need some sort of social housing. Yeah. So I asked, how do we get the private sector that is doing about 99% of the work to deliver for the lower part of the market, to deliver for the 35?
And still make business sense to them.
Still make business sense. We came to the view that it doesn't make sense for government to pretend they can build and close this housing deficit. It's more efficient if we provide the private sector with incentives to build. So we did a quick trip. Ivory Coast, Rwanda, Kenya. We spoke to the Moroccans, did a bit of literature review to understand how countries are giving incentives to the private sector to build. And we invited about 28 different stakeholder groups here in our boardroom, spent about a month talking to them. What can we do for you? What can we do for you? And we've put together a package. And that's where you find that the finance minister announced in Parliament that there's a reform package aimed at having a master PPP framework with incentives, which the Minister for Housing will put out in the coming weeks. And it's designed to make it easier for private sector to deliver more homes cheaper for more of our people, and this time at the lower end of the market. So that's how I approach things. What's the baseline data? What are the value drivers? What can we do to achieve this particular? And then you plot the graph and you get to work.
Now, in the last few weeks, there's been some news around Saglemi, and this is not about the ongoing court case. More to do with the fact that there's a shortlisted number of businesses that are interested in taking it up to the next level. How do you see that project being resolved, and in what sort of time frame do you think?
So priority number one for us is resolving stalled projects. So Saglemi, SHC Adenta, President Kufuor's affordable housing projects in Akwedum.
That's right.
Koforidua. They are all part of the stalled projects. The major gap now is funding.
Okay.
And the Treasury doesn't have money to fund it. So what we had to do was to develop ways by which we can go to the market, raise private capital, and work with private capital to fund these projects, especially from our party's disposition. We're a party that believes in, working with the private sector. We don't have to put everything on the government, treasury requirement list.
Okay.
And so we're bringing in a lot of private capital. So Adenta, for example, private capital is leading the way, and we're resolving those about 70 homes that have stalled for about 10 years.
Okay.
Koforidua, we're going through that process with state housing. They're going to get a contract on site, hopefully soon. Saglemi, we opened bids, or we opened an RFP. 10 companies came forward. We gave them time to go look at the project, cost it, build a work schedule. 5 came back that they can do it. They've brought their bids. We have selected one of the accounting firms to do the evaluation.
Okay.
We have also committed that we'll publish all the bids we received and the evaluation report for full transparency.
Okay.
If you read the RTI Act, you don't always have to wait for people to request for information.
Once it's out there,
you can proactively disclose. Yeah. And I had the privilege of leading the implementation of the RTI Act, and I think that's the right thing to do. So we're going to publish all of that. We expect that by September we will get a contractor on site who can now resume work for Saglemi to be completed for Ghanaians to benefit from Saglemi, from Adenta, from President Kufuor's affordable housing in Pokwase.
Great stuff. Now, this would create some sort of a blueprint. Because this would be a departure from, government building, be it whether through SNIT or any other institution. How is this PPP framework? Because we've done some PPPs in the past, albeit not necessarily for housing.
Yeah.
But it, for some time, hasn't been for the lack of a better expression, the go-to model to deal with public infrastructure development.
Yeah.
How different is this going to be?
It is going to be a major paradigm shift because we're moving from the old model that President Nkrumah started with in Nkrumah Flats. They would take money from finance ministry and go and build something, or a Champon will do some low-cost housing, or Bozia will do some rural housing, or Jerry Rawlings will do some flats here and there. President Kufuor will try afford it. We are moving from that paradigm to say that the business of government is not to be building. The business of government is to create the enabling environment and to support the private sector that has the skill and the knowledge to do it and to do it well. So it becomes a major paradigm shift. If we do it well, it will stop this thing of stalled projects, because there is no government building. It's people, private people who have benefited from government incentives who are building. And government is only working with them to ensure that the price point is where it's supposed to be. Is it $25,000 for what, a 3-bedroom or something? When we give you those incentives and we cost it together with you, we know that this is the price point. So government provides that enabling environment and provides that support and allows the private sector to develop. It will also grow the Ghanaian real estate private sector, because then they will be doing more projects, bigger projects, building more competencies, bigger balance sheets, and some of them can even begin to go to other African countries and do bigger projects there. So I'm clear in my mind that this is the way to go. I'm happy that central government agrees with me, and we are going to push full throttle to get this achieved. I make the point that even if out of the new PPP framework, we are not able to build one new estate, but we're able to lay down this blueprint. And I leave here as minister, I think my work is done. Because what we would have done is that we would have laid a foundation that successive ministers can excel on. And I think that for me is one of the most important things we should be delivering in this short period that we have.
One of the biggest headaches, whether it's for agriculture or for housing, has been our land tenure system. How is... Because as part of a PPP, government is supposed to provide some sovereignty, some guarantees and incentives. Land is a big deal.
Yeah.
What's the
first thing? It's the first thing on our radar, because that's the first problem any real estate developer has to overcome. Find the land, buy it. Sometimes you're buying the same land from 3 people in the family. Then you sometimes have to fight off land guards, etc. Under the PPP framework that we are proposing, land doesn't have to be your challenge. Currently here at the ministry, our lands committee has got over 50,000 acres of land in various parts of the country. We want to bring that as equity and partner with real estate developers so that you don't have to buy the land. And when we make the land available to you, we want to build the horizontal infrastructure without asking for new money. We're saying that roads and energy and water should prioritize their budgets to send water and energy and roads into these enclaves where you are getting 5,000 or 10,000 homes coming up. Why are we building a road to a place where there are, 2,000 people? Because we want votes. And then there are 10,000 homes coming up in an area, and we see that private developer should build his own road and create his own sewage system and water. That was one of the problems with Saglemi. So Saglemi is sitting there, there's no water, there's no electricity, there's no sewage system, because they left it all to the private developer, and after paying him 200 million, it's not been done. So we've learned from it, and we're saying that as part of our incentives package, let's give you the land, let's do the horizontal infrastructure, let's also help you get cheaper construction finance through the National Home Ownership Fund. Let us also assist you to get off-takers who take it off your hand. And let's help also to develop the demand side of the market by stimulating the mortgage side so that it's easier for people to get a mortgage. Young guy like my colleagues here, behind the cameras, who have gotten a job, the bank should be able to look at their inflows and say, I'm going to write you a mortgage for the next 25 years of your life. And all you do is that you pay monthly and then this building is yours. So how do we help the banks to get cheaper, longer-term money? So we are working on reforms to the National Home Ownership Fund so that I can crowd in pension funds and other funds from DFIs. Just last week, you saw the MD of Shelter Afrique visit me here in Ghana. After we made a strong case in Kigali for Ghana, and Ghana is taking a seat on the board of the Shelter Afrique Development Bank. We're hoping that we can attract them to come and also invest in this a fund that will support the banks. So that the banks have more money to write mortgages for people. So as you develop, there's more liquidity for people to pick it up. And one of the exciting things, let me end with this story. When I went to Tesano, where the president gave the 320 homes, while we're doing the snag listing, I asked that I wanted to meet some of the workers. And in my interactions, I was told that about 500 people worked as workers on that project over the 30-month period.
Wow.
And the earned incomes. I met some of them. And these were people who got a job for 30 months on this project. And the homes that have been delivered now, you see the spouses and the children of these police officers and the dignity and the self-confidence that it brings to them. So housing is not just about building a shell. It provides jobs, incomes, growth to the economy.
The productivity from the peace of mind.
It gives people dignity
Yeah.
in their lives. It also, and if you follow the words of Dr. J.B. Danko when he talks about property owning democracy and says that the laws of this country and the instruments of power should be used to do things that give people self-dignity and self-respect. That is what we mean as a party when we say that therefore we're investing in housing as a major tool, because it stimulates, it opens a major door for people of different layers. Apart from the people working on the project, the woman selling at the construction site has got incomes for the next 30 months or so. And if we're doing a next project after that, like the next phase, she's going to get a job there. So all of these things come together to really move the society to the next level. And that's why we are keen on putting in place a new paradigm that ensures that it can be happening faster and on a regular basis.
Great stuff. Now, the housing sector, I mean, I can imagine, and in a conversation with Mr. Han from Shelter Afrique, it opened my mind to the possibilities of what could happen.
True.
And I was very excited because, I mean, everybody would like to be able to, before your self-actualization, your basics must be covered. Have a home, and the homeowners, sorry, not the homeowners, but the home fund.
The National Home.
The National Home, yeah. Now, that's a game changer.
It is.
What was the inspiration, and what's the structure? How is that supposed to help me?
You see, when you study how major countries have solved the housing challenge or taken advantage of the housing opportunity, the best countries have used a fund like this. In Nigeria, they have what they call the Housing Solutions Fund. In Kenya, they have a National Housing Levy.
Okay.
I think it's 1.5 shillings or so. The best countries, you find that they have created a flow where you get some regular money from the treasury and you use that money to then stimulate projects. Now we are saying that when that money comes, don't spend it. Leverage it to raise 5, 6, 8 times more of what came in. And then you can attract more partners into it and use it therefore to do more projects than what you would have done. The NHF has done about 400 homes in Tema, come to 22 so far.
Okay.
But if we are successful in restructuring it like how we are proposing, and now make it sort of part of a GIF, Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund sub-fund, and you're able to attract more funding into it, you can do a lot more projects in the districts where you need a lot of projects for teachers and nurses and doctors and policemen who've been posted to the districts and government workers who are there. And you can do more affordable housing projects in the peri-urban and the urban area. So for us, learning from different places and bringing together the best lessons helps us to develop something for Ghana that should serve generations yet to come. I'm hopeful that we are successful in executing it and hopeful of seeing its impact over the next decade here in Ghana.
All right. And the mention of lessons, what are the lessons you personally have learned over the course of your career?
Oh, one of the first things is that you must always be curious about learning new skills. I hadn't done anything in marketing or communication. But when I was given the opportunity to work at Joy FM, I decided to go to Legon to study a master's degree in marketing so that I could do that job well. Bob Hinson was my supervisor. And it gave me skills to do a lot of work. For example, the creation of the Joy business brand. It was a totally new thing that we created after, for example, when I finished my MBA. And the products under the Joy business brand. And I built an advertising business just out of that one. But it was just about learning that new skill. When I got challenged by Yoni Kulendi, who was my pupil master, that I should go study the law. This was the case of the Republic versus Kojo Oppong Nkrumah and Charles Wekubobe, where I just moderated the show. And when we went on break, he asked me, have you studied the law before? I said, no. He said, you do yourself and this country a disservice if you don't study the law. I'm like, why? He says, the way you think through things is remarkable. The law will help you. And I went to law school. And today when I'm on my feet in Parliament having a debate or we're doing legislation or I'm in a committee meeting and we are discussing something and I go through the legal rubrics, I couldn't have imagined at the time that it will come in healthy. So one of the first lessons for me is that be curious to acquire more skills. It will come in handy for you. It has served me pretty well. Another lesson, and I always tell my kids that one of the biggest lessons I've learned from President Akufo-Addo is tenacity. No matter the odds, no matter the difficulties, be tenacious and have that clarity in your head that you are going to fight through this and get to the end. I remember COVID. There were times when he would be in deep thought for about 5 minutes and the room is silent. All the advisors are sometimes disagreeing among themselves. And this was a new thing. Nobody understood it. And he will sit there and he will make a decision and he will say, we're not too clear if this is the right decision, but with all the information available, this is where we're going to go. And we have to stick it through and push it through to get the results. And I've seen him in very difficult situations when the economic crisis started. And, you could tell the pressure on him, but he would tell you that, Oppong Nkrumah, you got to go through it. You got to go through it. And that tenacity is a lesson that I think a lot of young people need to learn, no matter the odds. You have to be tenacious and focused that we're going to push through this until we get to the very end. Another lesson I think young people need to learn is to reflect. To reflect. When do you have time to sit and reflect and question yourself and say, how can I do this better next time? It helps you to improve. It helps you to do better. I've learned a lot from my time as information minister. I've learned how to do some things better. And it comes from that whole philosophy of having time to reflect. Maybe these are a few lessons that I can share.
Yeah, I mean, I'm tempted to ask why your father named you Vincent.
I was actually born on St. Vincent's Day.
So that's the secret.
That's the secret.
There you go.
So,
okay. Well, I got
Catholic church.
Yeah.
They pick the dates. Hey, which saint's day is it? Then they give it to you.
Oh,
so that's
okay.
Come.
That's interesting. Well, I got my Vincent because my father is Vincent.
Ah.
And as his first boy,
my fellow Vincent.
Yes, one Vincent to another. But Kojo, it's been great talking to you, and I can only wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
And I think you make a lot of people proud.
Thank you.
If not just your parents and your teachers.
Yes. Mr. Lakesson, Mr. Samuel Odaitinkrang, Mrs. Kato, Mr. Bodi Dankwa, who is now of blessed memory. Yes, I hope they are not disappointed.
Yeah, but just before, let's get into, here you are the minister, you are the overall boss. When you walk out of here, Kojo Oppong Nkrumah is the boss.
She is. She's my landlady.
Yes. How much of a layer of growth has being a husband and a father brought to you?
Oh, it's helped me mature, see things from a more responsible perspective. And I'm grateful to God that I've had a great wing woman by my side. She's my fiercest critic, my number one supporter, and she's brought out the best in me in the, years that we have known each other initially as friends and then dated and then, have become a couple who are raising 4 lovely kids. Being a father puts a whole burden of responsibility on your shoulder. One day I'll tell you about a near-death experience I had. And in that moment, the only thing I could think about was my kids and the Kuya. And I was wondering whether, for my kids, I have done enough to imbue in them the kind of mindset that would enable them overcome the challenges of their day. And whether for Ikuya, whether I've been able to work with her to achieve the things that we had, spoken about right from the very beginning. But kids and family life have a way of helping you to reflect on your responsibilities and making you a lot more, cognizant of that than you would rather be.
Yeah, I know you said your children are lovely. As all children. But do you ever find yourself being killer at home?
Sometimes my daughter, jokes with me that, Daddy, do you remember those days when you used to shout at me that, hey, don't be silly? Then I kind of says, my dad, who used to say that? I don't know why I'm also doing it. But
Your father's son.
I am my father's son. I am.
Great stuff. I mean, you have a busy schedule. Do you listen to music at all?
I do. Music is one of the things that helps me to cope with, may I say, the tension and the difficulties. And I have an interesting wave of different genres of music. Currently, I'm listening a lot to Andrea Bocelli.
Okay.
Yes. I just, chanced on his rendition of the song by Ed Sheeran, Perfect. And he sings it, I think, in Italiano. And, I'm enjoying it. But I also enjoy my high life very much.
Okay.
I'm usually a high life, person. And lately, the Afro beats is also giving me a good vibe because I hear my kids playing it a number of times on their headphones.
Oh, you're discovering music through the children,
They
right?
have some interesting selections.
Yeah.
So it kind of gets me to enjoy what they listen to.
I mean, people think that because you work in the media, you should know music, right? But I have to be honest with you. My two boys are exposing me to music that I should know.
Yeah. But which you didn't know.
Which I didn't know.
Yeah. I know quite some music. I can DJ a bit. But they have some interesting numbers.
I tell you. Are you finding that as you became a parent for the first time, for you, was it a daunting moment or was it, I get to live my life again?
No, for me, it was actually a scary moment because I caught myself asking myself over and over again when I had my kids that, gosh, I'm responsible for somebody's life for the next about 18 years of their life. I have to help them find their God. I have to help them have their head properly screwed on, have their value system properly aligned, have skills that they can survive in this world with, have an attitude or a character that is resilient against all. It's a lot. It's not just the biological process of just having a child. So kids, like I said earlier, have a way of helping you to reflect on your responsibilities a lot more. And now as I've been given higher responsibility, then you look at the 100,000 people in Ofonsia UAB. You go to a school and you see a little kid there and you're asking, what is my responsibility to this kid and how do I ensure that these kids become better off?
Yeah.
And sometimes you come to the realization that we have to build a new school for these kids, else they will struggle to, compete with other kids in other areas. Or, in fact, I remember when I found out that we didn't have even one medical doctor in the constituency.
Wow.
It comes to you that, we have to invest in building a whole new polyclinic in this area because these children cannot be left here to just struggle with the vagaries of the weather or poor medical care or stuff like that. So all of these things come together to help you reflect on your responsibilities, first to yourself, to your community, and to the nation at large.
Wow. So you always played a particular song on the Super Morning Show. Yes, and I've kind of realized that. I mean, Kamala would play Changes every day.
Yeah.
You had Dream Big.
Yeah.
What's your story?
I first heard that song when I was driving to work one morning. I was listening to Hits FM actually. I remember, and that's when I heard the song. And the words made so much of a meaning to me because they challenged me not to leave my sights within the normal scope of what we had all been used to, but to lift up my head and to dream as far as the oceans would end and to ask myself, what's the best we can do in this particular situation? There are times when I work with my colleagues and they say, oh, that's a bit overambitious. I'm like, Charlie, Elon Musk has figured out how to take a rocket to the moon and bring it back and land it. And you are saying that, what? We should just be okay that this is how it's done here in our part of the world. I'm not taking that from you. We have to push and dream big. So that song spoke to me, challenged me a lot. And that's why every morning for almost those 8 or so years as I hosted the morning show, that's the first sound you hear me play. Because he had a way of firing me up. And it was the whole ethos of our show that we're going to dream big and do something spectacular. That's how come we started the Read 100 Club.
That's right.
To get all of these kids reading again. We started building libraries in other parts of the country because we wanted to, challenge ourselves. How do we extend some care and support to, kids who were out there? So it spoke to me. It still does. So occasionally I find myself listening. And I have friends who, when they hear it somewhere, they will do a little recording and say, hey, that's your number.
Fantastic stuff. Well, for me, this is my takeouts from this conversation. Number one is that we have to be agile. And if you're going to survive, you're going to do great work in any sphere, you've got to be agile. Now, agility will come in various forms. The culture shock of moving to Accra, adapting to that. The ability to learn that this is a way to prepare for examination, albeit happening accidentally. So that awareness, that's number one, agility. Number two is to actually have a plan. Because you said very early on that, I went to Pope John's and they looked at my results and says, go do science. And you're like, no, I want to go and do a bachelor in commerce. I mean, you thought that before you got to Pope John's. Before you started your secondary education, you were already thinking about what to do in the at the tertiary level. The third thing is also the acquisition of knowledge. Whether you're reading books in fields you may never practice, but you will find the mind is a sponge and it becomes useful later in life. Number four is also to have great relations with people. I don't know whether you learned that from you and your friend Achampon being not so serious in class because you would be talking to everybody, but being gregarious and affable is important, because if God is going to bless you, He's going to bless you through another human being, and you must be liked first.
Yes.
And so that's four, right?
Yeah.
The final thing is if you can't do anything at all in this world, you should have a desire to be great. You should have, no matter where you find yourself,
dream big.
Just dream. Just dream big.
Dream big.
Because all dreams are valid.
True.
And time reveals them all. So, thank you so much.
You should play Dream Big at the end of the show.
I think we should. I think we should. And we'll certainly do that.
No,
but
thank
you for hosting me in your office.
Thank you for coming by. You should visit me some more.
I'll try.
I hear you.
I'll try.
I hear you, bro.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
All right.
Cheers.
And that's how we...